The views and opinions expressed on this program are those of the participants and do not reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
BronxNet. Your voice, your views, your vision.
Coming up tonight on Perspective, some call it the latest in a fashion trend. Some say it's just creative expression, but others think it's offensive and only demises our image as a civil society. Tonight, we tackle the issue of sagging. Is it just a fashion or something deeper? What's your opinion? Join in tonight on the discussion. That's tonight on Perspectives with yours truly, Darren Hyman.
The views and opinions expressed on this program are those of the participants and do not reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
What's on your mind? Let 'em know. What's on your mind? What's on your mind? Let 'em know.
Anything relevant to life, you bring it to the table. Whether you make a move solo or a movement with a stable. No fables to speak on your decisions, cause in the long run it's your voice, your views, your vision. Keeping it real with many messages for you to know. This ain't radio, but DJ runs the show. Entertainment, he rocks it. Politics, he locks it. The host with the most would handle any topic. Don't forget to share your perspective with shines of light, cause it might make a difference in someone else's life.
Make a difference.
What's your perspective?
Express what's in your heart and your mind. Share your perspective.
And good evening, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Perspectives. Darren Hyman here with you. We encourage you to join in on our conversation. You can tap into Perspectives by checking us out on the web, www.bronxnet.org/perspectives. That actually is YouTube, or leave us some comments on YouTube. Let us know what you think about the show. And if you're watching live, always call us 718-960-7241 or send us an email. We'll share them live on the show. Well, we start off today talking about sagging. What are we talking about? Sagging jeans. Some people consider it to be a fashion trend. Others consider it to be offensive. Actually, legislation is possibly in the works right now to see whether or not sagging would actually be considered a crime. People who have their jeans, quote unquote, sagging off their behinds. The question is it their right to just be able to do that, or is it a crime? Well, here to talk a little bit about the whole sagging controversy are two people who are very familiar to us here at Perspectives. Andy King, who is the director of the Bronx Youth Empowerment Program, which deals with many young people here in the Bronx. And then Coach Steve Lynn, host of Dare to Dream program, and we thank him for coming and sharing. Both of you guys actually for coming and sharing with us here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Let me get your perspective, if you will. And I'll start first with you, Andy. When it talks to the topic of sagging and these sagging jeans, we see people walking the streets, the jeans are sagging, you can go pretty much anywhere this day, jeans are sagging. What's your perspective on the whole sagging controversy? Because there is legislation trying to make this against the law. Agree? Disagree?
Well, I think anytime that you're wearing anything that can be offensive to other folks, society has to make a decision what's appropriate and what is not appropriate. Over the course of years, if you take in the history of America, they've decided what's right for our communities and what's wrong for our communities, and they can perpetuate any activity, whether it can be detrimental to our young brothers or it can be something that's positive to our young brothers. So when I hear about legislation possibly being enacted to say if it's decent exposure, I can support that, because I wouldn't want my mother, my grandmother to be having to walk down the street to see the buttocks of a 14-year-old walking down the street. And what are fathers at home doing, or men in the community doing, or not doing, shall we say, to allow this type of behavior to actually exist in the communities?
Coach Steve Lynn, your perspective.
I have to concur with that. The legalities of it, of course. What is indecent exposure? If they were showing bare skin, then there would be no question. It would be just like undressing down and being naked through the street. However, the fact that they are wearing their shorts or underwear or whatever underneath their pants might make it a little difficult when it comes to the legality, as I said before. But my brother, I agree with him wholeheartedly. This whole idea and the whole look stems deeper. Legislation or legalities won't cure it. It'll help, but it seems to run a lot deeper, particularly in our community.
Let's talk about the foundation of sagging. For those people who may not be familiar with the foundation of where actually these sagging pants and the whole sagging look actually came from, share with us.
Well, prison. Clear and simple. When the inmates, to prevent them from hanging themselves or causing body harm to others, they took their belts away from them. So in turn, again, the gentleman's pants would tend to droop. As any one of us, if we walked around with slacks that we didn't have a belt on and was possibly too big, because it's not like when you're incarcerated, they say, okay, let's measure your size and trim it as a tailor and make sure that your pants fit. No, if you wear 36 waist and we got only 38s, you get those 38s and you put them on. But without a belt, you know, your pants would droop and drag. Now today, it's gone a little further, that the look of, you've seen young brothers, their pants are not even just halfway to their butts. Some of their pants are below their butts.
Yes.
And in turn, in jail, that is a sign that you belong to another male in lockup. So some of our young people, they don't even have a clue actually what they're doing when they're walking around the streets looking like. And when you tell them, enlighten them, some of them are combative to the new information, and some of them are totally at awe because they did not even know what they're perpetuating when they walk around the communities looking like such.
When you see people with sagging jeans, the question I'm going to ask you is, what do you say to them? Do you say anything or do you just observe?
No, well, you already know, Dare to Dream, we don't hesitate. That's our family, that's our boys. But we talk to them. We've talked to us many times. The young men that we've talked to, and we're talking hundreds, rarely do any of them have any type of male leadership. If you talk to them about who leads you, where did you get this look, where do you get this disrespect from, they seem to have just an inner no caring about anybody for themselves, and that's really where it comes from. There's a cry for help. They're saying, listen, see me. I want to talk to somebody. I need somebody to show me the right way. If not, I'm going to follow the crew. And that seems to be what they're doing, because we're seeing the sagging pants, not just in New York, but Battle Creek, Michigan, small towns where they really have no reason to do so. But it's just a cry of, listen, I need some help. I need some guidance. And that's really what they're telling. Most of them talk to you. It's been my experience.
And one of the things that's important to note is this is something that might have started in the African-American community, but this has branched out into all the other cultures, and this is becoming now culturally acceptable, the fact that you can walk this way.
And females as well. We've seen many females that have done the same, adapted that same type of style. Part and parcel to the jail and where it came from, the media has to have something to do with this. For the last 20 years, the music, the videos, those types of things have perpetuated that look, that attitude. We as a community accepted it. We turned our back on it. We didn't say anything about it when we started cussing on the music, when we started seeing more and more cursing on television. Now all of a sudden, we're surprised that the kids wouldn't emulate that.
Right.
And that's all they had. They didn't have the leaders. They didn't have fathers in their home. So they were going to follow something. Ergo, here we have it.
And it has been a controversy. I want to talk about the controversy and hear what some people are saying, because there is there is legislation in the works to try to make sagging pants a crime. Now, here is what some in the hip-hop community are saying. This is the latest example of adults trying to repress the creativity and individuality of kids. This is Russell Simmons, who's the founder of Fat Farm and Argyle Culture. This is what he had to say. You know, the latest example of adults trying to repress the creativity and individuality of kids. Why would kids want to dress like Senator Adams? Talking about Senator Eric Adams, who's proposing the legislation. There's no connection to sagging pants and the ability to succeed. Just look at what buttoned up America has done to the rest of the world and each other. Why can't kids be different? And so Russell says, why can't kids be different? There's nothing different with the button up. Look at the button up culture. Why can't we have this sagging culture?
The sagging culture, you know, I have, you've heard of a little young lady by the name of Nene Ali, a spoken word. She's part of my youth empowerment program. And she has one spoken word that she says, you know, if young men look at sagging spelled backwards, they actually see what they're actually acting like. And I won't even use the word what sagging spells if you spell it backwards. I'll leave it up to the people out there to figure out what it actually means. Having a style, I mean, we all grew up. When we grew up, we had our own little styles and the way we dressed, and it was the fashion of the day. You know, I've seen some of the young men today, you know, their pants, they've taken their shirts, and because it seems like they want to advertise the name of their pants, the shirts will come down just to where the top of the pants start. Now, for some of them, they don't seem to get it. They go a little further where this look looks totally inappropriate. It's not a style. I can look at a young man and see when a man is putting a style together, then as opposed to I'm looking at somebody who was just really lost and out there, not understanding that his image, he's taking it to another level. And when you do things like that, you become offensive to the people. And when you become offensive, now the behavior is different than talking about it's just a style. And one of the things I found offensive, he mentioned about the media having everything from the rap world that sells is something that's negative that's portrayed on our community. We know that this look is inappropriate as adults, but even when you go to some of the stores, I saw mannequins. Mannequins are dressed with their pants halfway down their butts. I mean, what are you saying to us? If only thing I can get is sagging pants, that's the way I'm going to dress. If I can't find a tie and a suit in the community, then I have to dress what they provide to me in my community. And that's what our young men are facing. What's one of the issues they're facing today.
What do you think about Russell? Is Russell saying, listen, you guys are just taking this a little bit too far. You know, hip hop is a culture. These young people have a culture. They ought to be allowed the opportunity to do this. You know, Button Up has this generation. Now it's the sagging generation. You say what?
With all due respect to Mr. Simmons, he's not around over here when we're talking to these young men. He's not here when we have to pick up the pieces for these young men who are constantly being picked up and taken to jail. He's nowhere to be found when the young men have nowhere to go, kicked out of their houses, no jobs, nowhere to be found. But yet when it's something that seems to be dealing with his world, the music world, the video world, he wants to jump on it. Quite frankly, I laugh at that comment, and I wish that he would not have said anything like that, because it's in some ways pitting us against each other, and that's not what we need right now. If anything, he should have at least said, let's talk about this. Let's see how we can't work together. Nobody's talking about making them dress with the button-up nation. We're talking about young men and women taking pride in our culture, taking pride in themselves, representing our family well, so that they can have a wonderful life and future generations can do great things. I don't know really what he's talking about or who he's trying to address, but it's not our family, and it's sure not here in the Big Apple, because we rarely see him in the Boogie Down, particularly when it comes to helping them.
Well, I'm going to take that, and we're going to take a quick break and come back. You know, but one thing I got to say about sagging is this. You know, the crazy part for me about the whole thing is, and you know, and I'm a belt guy too, and you know, back in the day, I used to wear suspenders from time to time too, especially with the suits.
Of course.
But the crazy thing for me is when you've got sagging jeans and you still got a belt on. That's a problem for me. I don't get it. Gotta take a quick break and come right back here. Our Perspectives. Darren Hybe here with you. We'll be right back right after this when we return.
That's
Yeah,
for you,
man.
brother.
Yeah.
Hey, how you doing? Hey, girl, Nicole. Good luck on the play tonight. You're welcome. What's up, guys? Now you're gonna make sure that you return those on Monday, right? Thank you. Oh, nice. Come on, let me get your water. Get out the way.
And we are back here on Perspectives. Darren Hybe here with you. The topic of conversation today, we are talking about sagging jeans in our community. Right now, there's legislation by New York Senator Eric Adams trying to put legislation that would literally make it a crime for sagging jeans. Now, exactly what is sagging and the crime? We just saw a little bit of that graphic. We're going to go back to it and show you exactly what Senator Eric Adams is proposing. We want to bring that up on the screen right now and let you have an opportunity to see just what kind of crime it would be if this legislation is passed for sagging. And if we want to roll it right now, and we'll take a look and see. But the sagging, there it is right there. And as a matter of fact, this is something they're talking about in Flint, Michigan, crackdown on indecency. Now, the first warning comes for underwear that is being exposed. You get a warning if your underwear is exposed. Now, disorderly conduct would be anytime the underwear is exposed and the pants are below the butt, well, that's considered a disorderly conduct. And then anytime, as we spoke about earlier, the buttocks would be exposed, that would be considered as indecent exposure. And the punishment for either is 93 days to a year in jail and or up to $500 in fines. Talking about a crime that wears saggy pants, and that's actually in Flint, Michigan right now. When you see that, agree, disagree?
For me, I don't totally necessarily agree with the severity of the punishment, because what I like to see is our parents being a little bit more held accountable for their young people. Because even though you may have people who are over their 20s dressed like this, I work in a school, and schools who don't have uniforms, 90% of the guys are walking around with their and their parents are responsible for them. So we need to have our parents to be part of. If you have some legislation, hold the parents accountable. Just like if that 14-year-old child breaks somebody's property, you go into the parent to hold them responsible. Well, if the young person is walking around with indecent discipline, then let's start holding parents accountable so they'll start interacting in the behavior their child's are participating when they leave the house, because they may leave the house looking neat, but when they get in the street with their guys, they start dropping it like it's hot, and it's not cool. So then in turn, if they get a summons or expelled from school for this indecent exposure, then parents are going to start paying attention, and they're going to start treating their young men out.
Mm-hmm.
I have to second that. Based on once again, the legislation, hard to enforce. We're talking a lot of young people. And this 90 days in jail, where they're going to pick them up and take them to the precinct. I know there has to be some type of discipline. Whether or not it's this, I'm not quite sure. I agree with my colleague, though, the parents. I'd like to see that more. We just don't have a lot of guidance, as we said before, from the parents. And somebody has to be held accountable for that. Let them be in trouble for that. If your son continues to do that, you're going to get it, bottom line. Take care of them or not, it's up to you, but somebody's going to pay for that, because we don't want that anymore in our family, and that still is our family.
Right. I want to get another comment. Mayor of Dublin, Georgia, Mayor Phil Best signed a bill amending the existing public indecency law so that it applies to anyone who appears wearing pants or skirts more than 3 inches below the top of the hips, exposing the skin or undergarments. So all across the country, this whole sagging issue is really being talked about. You know, the one concern I have is I believe that you have to hold, young people accountable. There has to be a certain amount of parental accountability, because we cannot talk about our young people and then not talk about our parents and not holding them accountable. The danger about the legislation for me is that we already see young people and particularly African Americans at disproportionate amount of rates involved in racial profiling. They've already engaged in the criminal justice system, things that are already being used to prevent them from possibly even getting a decent job or things of that nature. To have something like this, which may be minor, but an employer or anyone else could use later on down the line, in a criminal perspective, for me, kind of raises the question as to, maybe we should be doing a better job of community policing in regards to letting police do police.
Well, I like to see that. There's no doubt, as we said before, there's been a lot of fingers in this pot regarding how we got to this point.
Yes.
A lot of people should be held accountable regarding how we got, and let our young people and old people, quite frankly, because we've seen some old heads doing the same thing.
Listen, I was
That's
just getting ready to
unbelievable.
say that. You can't. And when I say young people, because they are considered the majority. But come on, you see old heads.
Oh, all the time.
We see, fellas, who trying to get into the club. They looking like, they're looking like that. And it's not because they don't have a job and can't afford a belt. they just thinking it's cool too. So if we want to hold these young people
Yes.
to the fire, you also got to talk to some of these adults who are doing the same thing, if not even worse.
I agree. I agree.
Two things I'd like to add here. The media plays a tremendous part. Young people are impressionable. So when they look at their music artists, the people that they want to emulate because they sell that music is the way to go, and that's unfortunately our rap communities. But I saw, I believe it was the NAAC Awards or something like that, and the artist Trayvon, I believe it was, his pants is halfway, his buttocks showing.
Yes.
But I'm saying, this is an image award, and you got this guy running around with his underwear down?
Yes.
What does that say about... There are people accountable that we need to start calling our young people on and let them know that they come from a lineage of kings and queens. You know, they didn't come from hobos and bums. You know, the lineage of the black man in America was strong. And there was a disconnect from people of strength from yesterday to what we're looking at today. Fashion is one thing, but they've kind of let the fashion, you know, go to another level that brothers like you and I and the people who understand, they need to really get in the trenches with our young men and have real conversations about what's happening with them, what this look will perpetuates. And I add this. We have, as you know, the Youth Empowerment Program. We meet with NYPD every month to talk about the do's and the don'ts. One of the things that police officers look for, they call what they call the uniform. And if you're wearing a certain type of dress wear, you're getting stopped and you're getting questioned whether you're doing nothing or nothing, but just because of the look. Take somebody who has their pants pulled up, shirt on, looking neat. The chances of them getting stopped and questioned goes down tremendously to someone who has, quote unquote, the uniform, the saggy pants, the big hood, and the shoelaces all loosed up.
I want to tell you, the fashion community, particularly the African-American fashion community, responded. Sean John, Vice President, Jeffrey Tweedy, doesn't like the campaign because he thinks Adams is unfairly targeting African-American men. He says, I wish he wouldn't focus on African-Americans and instead talk about all races, says Tweedy. Many different people are involved with this trend. It's not just black kids. You can go to Washington Square Park and see skaters wearing tight Levi's in a similar way. Sean John, Vice President Jeffrey Tweedy, and he said that in the New York media. So what do you think about...
We don't differentiate based on your culture. Wearing your pants like that is wearing your pants like that. Where he came up with that comment, I'm not quite sure. Once again, he seems to be trying to defend change for us, and I would question why he would even come with that. It sounds ridiculous, quite frankly. I don't know the legislation by heart, but I'm sure that Senator Adams did not write it, and you cannot write it based on one demographic, one culture. So,
But I think the focus is that when you look at it, particularly when Senator Adams was talking, he pretty much was talking about within our own community and looking at the African American community and seeing that, not singling out solely African Americans, but just saying that the majority of cases where you're going to find this at can be found in the community. And he has a point.
and the Latino community as well. A lot of those young fellas, particularly in the Bronx.
I would like to answer to this question. Because it's in the black community, it gets advertised as something that the black community started and the black and Latino community owns. Let's go into some of these white communities and see how some of these young people are actually dressing and sagging, because it's still an image, it's still a style, but you won't see it on TV as much as you see it in our communities, because that's what they're showing. They're putting it out there in the world. This is what happens in the black communities. Well, let's go over to some of those Caucasian communities where, you know, you don't hear much about, because they have their suits on and, you know, they have their school jackets on in the day, but then let's see what they look like on a Saturday afternoon.
Right, and you'll see that, because I've been to some schools, and you know, I'm not going to single out any school, but I've been up in Westchester County, you know, the ritziest of the Ritz, regular high school, but yet and still you can still find young people with the same thing. You know, I say, you know, and a young white man, sagging pants, shirt wide open, matter of fact, smoking a cigarette, sitting on the curb.
Exactly.
Right.
So, I mean, we're talking about a culture.
Exactly.
And I think that when people look at it from this perspective, you know, sometimes we look at it as a particular race, but we're looking at a culture and something that's actually permeating through the culture, and something that actually needs to be addressed, whether or not the question of sagging is actually right or wrong. Should you be wearing sagging pants? Now, I think we all are in agreement when you're sagging and your butt is showing. You definitely, now that ought to have some, you know,
trouble.
Right. Here we see, you know, Senator Eric Adams saying we are better than this. Stop the sag, raise your pants, raise your image. And full billboard actually out there trying to address the whole issue of SAG and talk about raise your pants and raise your image. Share about the image, because I think we talked a little bit about it. What is, for a young person who might be watching, and you might be watching and say, listen, I wear my pants like that. I really don't, I don't see I really don't see what's wrong with it. What is the image portrayal in the hearts and minds of police, adults, and other people who don't necessarily look like, who don't necessarily do this? What's their portrayal of people who have sagging pants? Real quick.
A rebel, no doubt. Somebody who is just disrespectful, doesn't care about themselves, doesn't care about anybody, and is going nowhere. A loser, quite frankly. I mean, when they see that, that's the first thing that comes in their mind. There's a loser. Besides talking to them, getting to know them,
right,
any front. So, and that's just how life is. Appearance, and everybody knows that. Your appearance speaks for you before they get to talk to you.
Right.
Unfortunately, as we said before, a lot of these young folks and the old folks didn't have the type of leadership and love and respect given to them by somebody in their lives that can teach them that. That has to be taught. And as you talk to many, as we have done before, you will ask them, how did you get to this point? Nobody ever told me, especially from a male point of view.
Mm-hmm. Let me get Andy on this one before we wrap up.
Image is everything. Anti-society, that's what the look gives us. Knowing where it comes from, you can't change the meaning of something because you say so. If the sky is blue, the sky is blue. I can't call it orange today because I want to call it orange if it's blue. And sagging pants depict the image that was created from and being incarcerated, and that's what comes with it. Young brothers and sisters, pull up your pants so your mind would follow. That's all I can say to you. Please, pull up your pants. And you know what? I flip it another way. If you pull up your mind, your body will follow. I had another word for it, but we're on television. Right. Okay? But that's what they need to do. And we need to have communications. Senator Adams, I appreciate that you're trying to do something, but let's give us some preventive medicine so we don't have to have punishment for behaviors that we can correct early in life.
I'd like to see, and I agree with that, I'd like to see Senator Adams try to do a coalition to see other things that we could do besides that to try to deal with this issue. We got to have a conversation, like you said before, who are the culprits?
Right. So kind of address the issue, but ease up on the legislation.
Well, that's going to be a hard one to pass.
Yeah.
No question.
Yeah, true indeed, true indeed. Coach, we thank you so much for sharing with us. And Andy King, thank you so much for being here with us as well. That about wraps it up for another edition of Perspectives. Topic of conversation, sagging pants. We can go another 30 on this one because truly, so much to say. But this is what we want you to know. Truthfully, there's a lot that you can do to improve your image. But if you really understand the image that you're portraying just by sagging pants, you might want to think again. Everybody's allowed freedom of expression. Everybody's allowed freedom of expression. But then also, people are also allowed the freedom to make up their minds as to who you are, how to treat you, things of that nature. And you can't get upset when somebody makes up in their mind, I'm going to treat this person this particular way because this is the way they look or the way that they appear. We do it. Might it be wrong? It's the truth. It might be wrong. But yet and still, there's no doubt in society, this is how people actually act today. So, for all of our brothers and sisters who are out there wearing sagging pants and you never knew the history, no, it comes from jail. No, that it's not a positive look. But if you are going to do it, make sure you do it right. Pull them up, put on a belt, look cool. You can still look cool with a belt on. That's just my perspective. I mean, I think a belt is still in these days. And for those of us who got a belt on and your pants are still sagging, that means you might have to even get it tighter a little bit. And if it's too, you can't make it happen, that means you got to go up one size in order to make it happen. That's Darren Hyman here on Perspectives. That's my perspective. Take care. See you soon. God bless. Sometimes they don't even know.